It's simply dinner with my ex. Stop being so possessive." The words landed on the countertop between the cutting board and the knife, a thin, glittering thing laid down like silverware for a meal no one had agreed to share. The kitchen smelled of garlic surrendering in olive oil, water just beginning to smile in the pot, and Brittany moved through steam as if it were stage fog, hair pinned with the offhand perfection of someone who knows which angles are their angles and how light should greet them. Jake, 32, shoulders carved by years of scaffolding and deadlines, a salary sturdy enough to buy a couch that forgave long days, set his palm flat on the butcher block and counted the wood grain lines to keep from saying the first sentence that came. "Tyler heard about a development looking for residential partners," Brittany went on, knife tapping peppers into color, cadence bright, a radio host before the song kicks in. "Uptown, the new place with the cedar paneling. It's an opportunity." Opportunity tasted metallic in Jake's mouth, like a coin caught behind a molar. He thought about the restaurant's website he'd bookmarked months ago. Velvet banquettes, a wine list that read like a dare, the kind of lighting that turned every table into a confession booth. He imagined forks chiming against porcelain, the soft collective murmur of people saying things they might later pretend not to have said. Business, she'd called it. "Dinner," he repeated, testing the syllables for cracks. "Just you and your ex." Brittany sighed in the way people sigh when they've already told the same story to themselves in the mirror, and it came out better there. "Charlotte real estate is not a hobby, Jake," she said, dropping the peppers to sizzle, scent brightening the air. "Connections matter. He's a broker. I'm an agent. This is networking. Don't make it weird." She salted the pan with a flourish. The hiss sounded like a room disagreeing. He pictured the last 6 months as a strip of film he could hold to the light. The nights her phone hummed like a trapped bee on the coffee table until she scooped it up smiling. The pace of her in socks, phone held to her cheek, talking square footage and cap rates and zoning like incantations. The way her laugh on those calls was a laugh from an earlier decade, pre-him, pre-us, delighted, younger than he'd ever seen her in their quiet. It wasn't that he begrudged ambition. He loved watching her eyes sharpen when an idea landed. He loved that Charlotte's skyline could still excite her from a highway shoulder. It was the boundarylessness that felt like someone had painted a door on a wall and insisted he pretend not to see it. "I could join you," he said, thinking of olive-slick menus, him nodding through acronyms, the check in his hand a plausible olive branch. "Pick up the bill, learn more about your world." Brittany froze a microsecond, enough that he noticed, not enough that she'd admit, and then smiled with the precision of a scalpel. "It's industry-specific," she said, sliding peppers to the edge of the pan. "You wouldn't understand the terminology. It would be awkward." The word awkward arrived with a perfume he didn't recognize. He stared at her blazer on the chair back, navy, serious, and the low-cut shell beneath it, a neckline that meant one thing in a dining room over candlelight and meant a different thing at a closing table at 2 in the afternoon. That night he lay on his back, the bedroom a soft aquarium of streetlight. Brittany was a warm weight beside him, breathing even as if sleep were proof of virtue. He could hear the plumbing make its long-throated swallow, the city's distant tires whispering about places to be. Possessive, she'd said. Threatened. Words that seed themselves in the mind and sprout at 2 a.m. He had not been in a nightclub in his life, but he understood other kinds of rooms. Concrete poured to a schedule, beams bolted true, the discipline of right angles. He understood that without boundaries, load-bearing becomes luck. Tuesday morning, clarity found him in the way rain finds a porch, quiet, decisive. He scrolled past names until he reached Madison, accounting consultant, 28, a laugh that had once made him misplace time. They had a nearly story last year that had dissolved in the acid of bad timing. He called. "Jake, to what do I owe this honor?" she said, voice carrying coffee steam and a practiced ease. "There's a new place uptown," he said. "Tomorrow, 7:30. "I've been looking for an excuse to go," she said, no hesitation, and the yes unclenched something at the base of his skull. Wednesday dawned sharp. Brittany's alarm bleated at 6:30, an hour she usually reserved for weekends and flights. She moved through the apartment at a clip, bathroom blooming with steam, and the musk-sweet punch of a new perfume, hairdryer roaring, mascara wands tapping like tiny drumsticks on a counter of glass jars. When she emerged, she had achieved a look that was less meeting than premiere. Blazer tailored within an inch of its life, the low-cut top a thesis, gloss a shade of ambition he'd never seen on her mouth at breakfast. "That's quite the professional outfit," Jake said, aiming for neutral and landing closer to irony. "I want to make a good impression," she replied, misting her throat with a scent that ate the room. He watched her tilt her blazer to showcase the line of skin. Good impression on whom? Almost escaped. He swallowed it back like a pill. "I've got dinner too," he said instead, flipping a mug in his hand. Madison. The uptown place. For a flicker, color left her face so cleanly he could track it. "Madison," she repeated, not a question so much as a diagnostic. From accounting," he said. The lipstick paused in midair, then resumed with almost comic seriousness. "Have fun," she said, and her voice had the texture of a cloth laid over broken glass. The restaurant had trained itself to be expensive. Hostess in black with a smile calibrated to be a privilege. Dining room glimmering like a rumor. Banquettes swallowing couples into intimacy. Candles in glass throwing slow moons onto the tables. It smelled of butter refusing to apologize, char, citrus zest twisted by confident hands. Jake's fingers tightened once on the wine list, the thick paper a reassuring friction. Madison in a black dress that did nothing and therefore did everything waved a menu like a baton. "Okay, serious question," she said. "If I expense oysters as morale, will the IRS cry?" He laughed for the first time in weeks without the laugh consulting anyone else. Then he saw them. Corner table, intentional shadow. Tyler, the man-shaped LinkedIn profile. Jaw watch, a suit that had never known a wrinkle, the posture of someone for whom doors become suggestion. Britney across from him, tilted forward, hand on his forearm like punctuation, a laugh she hadn't given Jake since the month of newness, a throat that caught candlelight like spilt milk. Her gestures were a choreography of attention. Hair tossed just so, blazer adjusted to the geometry of gaze, head canted to listen like people listen in commercials. The words from her mouth were likely cap rates and square footage. The rest of her spoke a different language and did not bother with subtitles. Madison followed his line of sight, sipped water, and said, quietly, "Well, numbers check out." He smiled with his teeth and felt nothing behind them. His phone buzzed. "What are you doing here? This is so awkward, can you please just leave?" He angled the screen so Madison could read. "She's committed to bit," Madison murmured, not unkind. He typed, "Enjoying dinner with Madison." "Don't mind us." Reply was instant. "This is important for my career. You're making it weird." He almost asked whose word had been weird first. He did not. He ordered the halibut. Britney tried to refocus, but attention is a slippery animal. It bolts at first scent of witness. Tyler's eyes did the math, confusion first, then dawning comprehension, then a polite closing of the blinds. "Restroom," Britney said, the word pitched to carry the 20 feet like a paper airplane. Jake watched her walk the aisle in heels that made small, expensive sounds. He imagined the bathroom, the lemon-clean air, the labored kindness of mirror lights, the paper towel's thin insistence. He pictured her braced over porcelain, hands on cool stone, the spray of cold water, the calculation reassembling itself behind red-rimmed eyes. When she returned, something in her was smudged. Tyler reached for her hand once, the way a man signals support without confirming intimacy. "You okay?" he asked. "Work stress," she said, and even from here the lie's gravity failed. The rest of their dinner played out like a rehearsal held after someone has locked the theater. Lines remembered but meaning gone. Tyler's fork moved more than his eyes. His watch became unignorable. Her laugh was a copy of itself with lines in it. They asked for the check with the air of people requesting absolution. "I'll call you next week," Tyler said, in a tone polite as a handshake with gloves on. Jake watched the sentence knowing it would never arrive. At their own table, Madison told him about a client who tried to write off Disney as a business trip and how she'd allowed the cost of a phone call under communications and nothing else. "You can't depreciate Space Mountain," she said. He snorted. The halibut flaked obediently under his fork. The lemon butter admitted it had been destined for his tongue since childhood. Across the room, Britney's shoulders rounded as she put on her coat, a cape suddenly too heavy. She did not look back. He did not either. Thursday morning arrived wearing the gray of old paper. The coffee maker grumbled, grinding beans into a promise. The kitchen smelled like wakefulness and something else. Metal, maybe, honesty unsheathed. Britney sat at the table with her phone, thumb hovering, eyes swollen into an admission she hadn't rehearsed. The apartment's usual hum had turned ceremonial, as if the appliances had agreed to observe silence. "So," Jake said, pouring coffee, the dark stream a ribbon, the mug warming his hand with a steadiness he needed. "How did your professional dinner go?" He didn't need the answer. He needed to hear what she would call it. "Fine," she said, "though having you there watching my every move didn't help the atmosphere." She did not say professional this time. He counted that as a truth trying out its voice. He sat across from her and set his mug down softly. The table registered the weight with a polite tap. "Professional atmosphere," he repeated. "I watched you flirt with a man for 2 hours. That wasn't business, Britney. That was a date someone forgot to stop." "You don't know what you're talking about," she snapped, and her voice cracked along a fault line that had been waiting. "Tyler and I have a complex professional relationship that you clearly don't understand." "Then help me understand." He kept his voice level, hands flat, palms open. "Explain why he looked confused to see me. Why a colleague would be surprised his partner's boyfriend exists." She blanched. The absence of a quick, slick retort was a new weather. "What have you been telling him about us?" Jake asked, and the question sat between them like a sealed envelope they both knew the contents of. Silence did its work. It dragged truth forward by the elbow. "It's complicated," she tried. He breathed in, tasted the bitterness that lives under coffee. "Uncomplicated. What does he think?" She sat. The chair creaked as if it wanted out. "He thinks," she said, each word like a glass set down carefully, "we're not exclusive. That we're still figuring things out." 6 months of dinners and plans, the beach he'd circled on maps, the way she'd left a toothbrush. A joke about how he folded t-shirts. The conversation about when to introduce parents, the half-decision about a dog. "Not exclusive" took a red pen to that calendar and drew a line through everything. Heat pressed behind his eyes but didn't spill. It settled lower, a hardening. 6 months, he said. "We talk about moving in, you drop exclusive for someone's benefit." "Which someone?" She flinched. "I needed those referrals," she said, and the honesty came out sharp enough to cut her. "He controls so much of the commercial market here. If I lost that, my pipeline." "So you kept him alive by killing me on paper," Jake said, marveling at how calm his voice sounded wearing this much fury. "You made me invisible so you could live in 2 rooms at once. Did you think there wouldn't be a fire?" "I was going to tell him," she sobbed, mascara turning the lower lids into small black coastlines. "The timing, there was always something, and the projects looked good and you decided your career was more important than the basic premise of us," he said. "You weaponized ambiguity. You made me doubt my own eyes. That's not ambition, Brit. That's cruelty dressed in a blazer." He stood. The chair's legs whispered over tile. He took his phone from the counter with a quiet he recognized from the moments before a demolition, the breath before the building gives. He blocked her number first because it was the only lever he could pull that guaranteed silence. "We're done," he said, not dramatic, not even loud. It was as if the room had said it through him. "Don't call, don't show up. I won't be your alibi anymore." She reached for him with a sound that had nothing to do with words. He stepped back. "You asked me not to be possessive," he said, and a strange soft humor passed through him like a gull through fog, there and gone. I won't possess any part of this." He left the apartment and the morning laid itself out like a clean sheet, light catching on windshields, the smell of mulch and gasoline, the sidewalk under his shoes a simple thesis. Forward, forward, Charlotte talks. Not loudly, not cruelly, just persistently, like a creek that insists a path into stone. In the commercial corridors where elevators deliver men in suits to glass rooms and cappuccinos arrive with leaves drawn in milk, stories move quicker than paper. Referrals dry not with a hiss but with an absence. Lunches become emails. Calls go unanswered and then unmade. The tale of a dinner that was a date dressed as a meeting acquired names and details and then caution, and soon Britney's phone learned to vibrate less. Jake didn't track it, not directly. He heard things if hearing was what you called Madison telling him over tacos that a broker friend of a friend said Tyler is, done making introductions there. He didn't cheer. He didn't ask for more. He stirred his pico de gallo and admired the way cilantro refuses to be anything but itself. He and Madison did not call their first month anything but a month. They did not make promises. They made dinners, roasted chicken with the patience it demands, pasta where the sauce clung because he'd salted the water right. They walked at dusk through neighborhoods that smelled like jasmine and grilling and old money and newer dreams. He learned the names of her clients the way one learns the names of constellations, slowly, with an eye for patterns. She learned not to fill his silences. He learned to ask about her day in a way that made space for the part of the story that hurt and the part that didn't. They held hands like a choice. He built new rituals. On Saturdays, he biked to the farmer's market and bought eggs from a man who wrote the chickens' names on the carton as if they were co-authors. He texted Madison a photo of a tomato that looked like a heart and wrote, "Should we consult a cardiologist?" She replied with a photo of a crooked bouquet and diagnosis. Love, stage 1. He allowed himself the luxury of laughing alone at his phone and not feeling foolish. Weeks later, he saw Britney in a coffee shop that had cultivated an aesthetic of rough wood and exact cappuccinos. She stood by the sugar, stirring nothing, her spoon making the empty, brittle chime of metal on ceramic. She had shrunk, not in body, but in the space she took without permission. Her hair was pulled back with less argument. Her eyes looked like someone had shelved sleep out of her reach. She lifted a hand, halfway up, paused there as if the air had thickened. He nodded, the way one nods at someone who once helped carry a couch up a flight of stairs. She dropped her hand and stared at her coffee as if it contained a map. He left without triumph because there was nothing to win. Madison squeezed his elbow outside. "Okay," she asked. He considered. "Okay," he said, and was surprised to find the word fit with room to breathe. Tyler remained a rumor moving through rooms. People said he'd put her on pause, then closed the tab. Someone said he'd told a colleague that business is a long game and he doesn't play poker with marked cards. Jake didn't repeat the lines. He planted herbs in a bigger box and learned what mint does if you don't contain it. He contained it. One evening, rain came like a decision, fast and absolute. He and Madison watched it sheet over the city from his window, streetlights turning each drop into a brief lantern. The apartment smelled like basil and ozone. He made grilled cheese with butter on the outside of the bread and a lid over the pan, the way that turns time into texture. "You're domestic," she teased. "It's not domestic," he said. "It's shelter." She kissed him with the kind of kiss that recognizes a thesis and approves. Later, under the lullaby racket of gutters, he thought about blindfolds, how he'd worn one happily for months, telling himself it kept dust out of his eyes. He thought about the night in the restaurant and how the candles had embarrassed the truth into softness. He did not hate the man he had been. He wanted to thank him for finally standing up from the table. He and Britney closed the loop with digital ink. Papers signed with the efficiency of the age, a ping confirming receipt, a second ping confirming finality. He emailed, "I wish you well," because wishing someone poorly is a curse and those rebound. She replied, "Thank you for the good months," and he sat with the sentence longer than necessary until it felt like an object that could be placed gently in a drawer. 2 months after the dinner, he returned to that restaurant with Madison because the halibut had been good and because places don't keep our ghosts unless we leave them tips to do so. They sat under a different light. The hostess had a different smile. The room had a different conversation running under it, something about market volatility and a wedding in Asheville. To new menus, Madison said, lifting her glass. To ordering without reading the footnotes, he added. They clinked. The sound was small and perfect, like a door closing with no slam, a window opening without squeal. On the walk out, he glanced at the corner table out of habit. It held a couple in their 50s splitting a dessert, spoons choreographed with the long practice of kindness. He hoped for them what he had learned to hope for himself. Not that nothing would break, but that what did would be repairable with time and attention and a willingness to name things honestly. Outside, Charlotte was its usual composite of ambitions, cranes needling the sky, runners stitching themselves along sidewalks, a bus sighing at a stop like a beast relieved. Jake's hand in Madison's felt like what it was, present tense. He squeezed once, not to signal anything but here. The night smelled briefly of wet asphalt and rosemary from a planter someone had bothered to tend on a median. The scent felt like a small, unreasonable mercy, and he took it.